Hello and welcome back to Jules Math Tools, where math is made easy. In our session today, this is part 13 on working with our PEMDAS questions. Now, as you know, we've already done 12 questions leading up to this point. So at this point, we won't be doing any more rough work at the side, but we will be working out our question within the question. So if you're ready to challenge yourself today, let's get started. So in our question today that we're working with PEMDAS, we have several operations that we are going to be working with. Now, as I stated earlier, we've already solved 12 different types of PEMDAS questions leading up to this point. So at this stage, I feel that we should be ready to work out our question within the question itself. Now, remember, if you want to challenge yourself, feel free to pause this video, jot the question down on a piece of paper, work it out for yourself, and then you can unpause the video and work out with me to see if one, you performed your steps correctly, and two, you got the same answer that I did. So let's get started. So now as we are working with PEMDAS, we know that the first stage that we need to look at is our parentheses. Now remember that the parentheses in any order of operation question is always to be solved first. That means that everything within our brackets need to be solved before we even work out anything that's outside of the brackets. Now within our brackets, we have two operations that we're looking at. We have our subtraction and we have our multiplication. And as you know, multiplication is to be solved before subtraction, which means that we will multiply our fractions of 4/5 times 1/6 before we even subtract. So let's get started. So we're going to multiply our 4 times 1, which is equal to 4, and our 5 times 6, which is equal to 30. Now, if you're working out at the side, that's fine. But remember, as always, like I always tell you, make sure that you plug these answers back into your question in their correct position. Now, if you're working along with me and you're working it out within the brackets, before we move any further, the first thing I want to do is, one, return everything else that I did not use back to my question. So that means that we're returning our 1/3, our subtraction sign, and remember that this portion of your question is in parentheses, so you will return that back to your brackets and return your 1/5 on the outside of your parentheses. So you have to make sure that everything lines up exactly where they were. That's important because it saves you from working out your questions in their incorrect form. So now what I'm going to do, because I look at my denominators for my 3 and my 30, I initially thought about simplifying my fraction. But because I know that 30 is a multiple of 3 and I need to find my LCD for my 3 and 30, and I know that my 3 and 30 has a common denominator in 30, I will not be reducing my fraction of 4/30, but rather I will leave it as is, and after I would have subtracted the fractions, I will then reduce it to its lowest term afterwards. So let's do that. So now the first thing we're going to do before we even subtract is convert my 1/3 into its equivalent form. And because I know that when 3 is multiplied to 10, that equals to 30. That means my 3 times 10 will give me my denominator of 30. And I would also multiply my 1 times 10, which will give me a numerator of 10. So once again, after I've converted my fraction to its equivalent form, I'm jotting back everything that I used that I did not use within my question. And I know to some of you, this step of writing everything back may seem a bit tedious and you may feel as if you do not need to do this step. But this is very important because it shows you how you need to ensure that as you're working through these questions, everything is being lined up in their correct position. Because like I've stated in earlier videos, I've seen students work through questions involving order of operation, and they have certain answers that are placed in the wrong position, or signs are moved around, or they don't know where it should go back. Like you can work them out separate, but then when it comes to returning these answers back to your question, you're completely lost as to where they should be going. And as a result, operation signs, numbers get moved around, and then you end up with the incorrect answer. So, taking these steps, although it may seem tedious, it does begin to teach you how to structure your question or how to line them up as you are working through the question to make sure also that the correct operation is being performed in the correct order. Okay, so now let's subtract our fractions in our parentheses. We have 10 subtract 4 will equal to 6, and 30 will remain in our denominator. Now, after we have worked out everything within the parentheses, then we can remove the parentheses. That means I do not have to write it back. And now I can now include my 1/5. Now remember that we're dividing at this point, and because we are performing division, we're going to apply our keep, change, and flip rule, which means I'm keeping my first fraction the same. I'm changing my sign to multiplication, and now I'm going to flip or take the reciprocal of my second fraction. So now at this step, we're going to multiply our 6 times 5. Remember that with fractions, we multiply numerator times numerator and our denominator times the denominator. So we have 6 times 5 will equal to 30. And 30 times 1 will equal to 30. Where your numerator and your denominator are exactly the same, that means we have one whole. So remember that even if you subtracted, if you simplified your fraction where you divided 30 by 30, 30 divided by 30 will equal to your 1 over 1, and 1 over 1 is still equal to one whole. Okay, so there you have it. We just worked out another question involving our PEMDAS. I know this is a lot of working in this question, or a lot of operation signs, and may have seemed like it's a lot that has to be done, but you made it through without having a hiccup. So as always, like I've always said to you, do get some additional practice in. And as always, we'll see you right here in the next session on Joe's Math Tools, where the aim is always to make math easy.